Welcome to r/Reddit Revenge. This is a story of someone getting back at someone with revenge after being wronged. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel and for so many likes. The first story: a-hole parked in a handicap spot. I decided to scare him and left a note on his hood. The second story: Grandpa took my dad's business and cheated the whole family for a long time. Soon I took his boss's chair. The third story: woman decided to protect her child without understanding the problem, so she was kicked out of the bar. And the first story is: handicap parking is for handicapped people, not rich ones. First, just FYI, in most handicap parking spots, there's a place next to the parking spot marked off for loading and unloading wheelchairs. In the US, it's usually painted with diagonal stripes. On to the story. My son and I were at Walmart, and as I parked, I saw that a new BMW convertible owner decided that striped spot was set aside for him. I looked and there was no sign of a placard or handicap tag. Peeved me off, and I stewed about it the whole time we were shopping. When he was still parked there when I came out, I decided to get spiteful. I found a piece of paper and left a note on his windshield. It said, "So sorry, I did not mean to scrape your car with my wheelchair. I would leave my contact info, but you were illegally parked blocking my van, so good luck buffing that out." We sat in the car another 20 minutes and waited. Out came this guy that looked like a personal trainer. He came jogging up to his car, chatting on his phone. He saw the note, screamed OSH. Then he spent the next 20 minutes going over his car, inch by inch, rubbing every speck of dust or dirt. He was still looking when we left. Nothing harmed, no damage. Just a lesson hopefully learned. I hope this man has learned his lesson and won't park in handicapped spaces again. I freaking hate it when people park in handicapped spaces when they don't have tags for it. You should have a sign so you can park in that spot. If they don't have it visible, the dates aren't marked, they can't park. Even if they look super handicapped, they have to have a sign, and they have to be visible to use the parking lot. The second story is: I went from school teacher to chairman of the board of a big company for the sake of revenge. When I was a tiny kid, my father was my best friend. He worked multiple jobs to support my family, all while powering his way through law school. He even built a couple of small businesses from the ground up with a couple of his friends. All while doing this, he managed to be the best dad ever, spending as much time as he could with my mother, myself, and my baby siblings. One day we found out that he had stage 4 stomach cancer, the kind that you don't recover from. My mother and I stayed by his side all the way till it was over. The last memory I have of my father was when he was completely immobile, practically a vegetable at this point, with tubes going in and out of his body, and me just praying that he'd still be able to remember who I was. All the guy could do was smile at me just to let me know he still recognized his son, even if the doctors told us most of his memories would be gone. Eventually, he fell into a coma for some days before waking up to say goodbye to my mother, who was by his side when he died. She was a housewife, so he really didn't have much to go on after his death. Enter my grandfather. He was one of those self-centered boomer types who makes everything about himself. After my father died, he'd used the newspaper obituary to boast about his dead son's grades and achievements, which I realized seemed to be the only thing my dad was to him. Just in case you were wondering, yes, we are Asian. My mother was grieving and trying to find a way to make ends meet, and my grandfather graciously offered to help her control my father's 2 businesses to help support us. My mother agreed because she didn't have any experience. While we grew up, the 2 businesses didn't provide much for us, likely because my father was one of the big reasons they were thriving. Mom was in and out of multiple jobs just to keep us floating. My grandfather offered to help put me and my siblings through school. I managed to score some scholarships with some good schools growing up, so thankfully he didn't have to do as much for me, but we were really glad that he helped out with my siblings. After I made it out of school, I found out that my family was broke and my 2 siblings were still making their way through medical school. My sister even offered to stop and just get a job, but I told her to keep going because she was doing so well and that she deserved to graduate. My grandparents had cut us off because they didn't approve of the directions my siblings took in life, especially my sister, who was, for them, too female to have a career in medicine. My grandmother is a bit of a misogynist. Why are you wasting your time and money becoming a doctor? You're just gonna have children and quit. I was working as a high school teacher when I was contacted by one of my dad's old business partners for one of his companies. After I asked him about how the company was doing, he told me that my grandfather, who was still in control of my father's shares, was siphoning money from the company for himself, and he was earning way more than he was giving me and my siblings for our education. So all our lives, he'd been making us feel indebted to him for money that was supposed to be ours to begin with, and he lied to us by telling us that Dad's companies weren't making any money for us at all. We also realized that when he cut us off, He was cutting us off from our own money, forcing my siblings to drop out and give up careers that they'd been working their whole lives for. What's worse is that this was our father's money, and we know that he'd wanted it to help us provide for our futures, even after he died, and here comes his a-hole father basically SHing on his legacy for his own enrichment. I even found out that he used his position to take possession of the company's office space and force them to set up shop in a smaller, cheaper office, while renting the original space out under his own name to the company's competitors to make money from them too. All while I had to work multiple jobs to help my mother and siblings pay the bills. Cue revenge. My grandfather's biggest weakness has always been his pride. In fact, I suspect that he wanted us to think he was helping support us out of his own pocket, because he wanted everyone to think he was some kind of hero, when in reality he was financially choking us. I recognize that no matter what my grandfather said, my siblings, my mother, and I were legally the owners of my father's company shares. So after having a statement signed by the three of them, I approached all the board of directors, sans my grandfather, and let them know that I was now that sole representative of my late dad's estate. My grandfather also made himself chairman of the board. According to the company records, he did no work for the company at all, so the position was just a name that allowed him to receive money. So I convinced him that since he was only chairman as representative of my father's estate, that made me the chairman. I did not intend to keep the position because I did not have the experience for it. Then I contacted other members of my extended family about my grandfather's unethical practices with the company's office space. He was eventually pressured by them into evicting the company's main competitor from their office space. Serves them right for conniving with my grandfather to take the company's old office space. At the next board meeting, I prepared for the moment I'd been waiting for my entire life. When he entered the conference room to preside over the meeting as the chairman, he found his chair facing away from the table with all the board members already seated at the table, and like a Bond villain, I spun the chair around to reveal to him that I'd been the one sitting there the entire meeting. I told him that the company and my family no longer needed him, and that I'd be taking control over representation of my father's estate. "Do you know that I'm the one who put him and his siblings through school?" he said in shock. I only went, "No, Dad did." The look of sheer embarrassment on his face was perfect. I've never seen him look defeated my entire life until that moment, and this sort of satisfaction could not be achieved by simply ratting him out. I stepped down from the chairman position and took a job in the company's treasury department as a bookkeeper with a meager salary. But at least now any profit sharing or dividends that the company released would go where my father wanted it to go. And finally, one of the first decisions I got to make as a board member before stepping down was to give my mother a permanent job that she deserved. My grandfather is now jobless. He spends all his time at home, and because he spent his life being selfish and self-centered, he has no friends. All he had going for him was being able to power trip over other people and boasting about his assets and achievements. Even my grandmother has had it with him, and the two don't even sleep in the same room anymore. I hope he lives the rest of his short life regretting that he didn't live his life with more compassion and humility. Edit. I've gotten a lot of comments about the legality of what went on. During all this, the only lawyer working in the company was my grandfather, and we all know he did Jack SH. When we hired a team of actual helpful lawyers, they told us exactly the same things you guys pointed out. They're still trying to clean everything up so we don't get into big trouble. Update. Apparently my sister saw this post and just informed me that he's kinda miserable now, because his wife is angry at him, because he siphoned what's left of their money to an extramarital sugar baby he had and probably another attempt at getting someone to affirm and glorify him. I guess he hasn't learned. He even still thinks he's like my family's hero. I've been mildly successful as a board member, and so far, I think my partners like me enough, but we all know I've got a lot to learn, and so they're helping teach and train me as much as they can. Most of them are my dad's friends and knew me as a kid. From time to time, Granddad comes to our house to tell us that the company wouldn't still be standing without him, that I owe all our success to him. Nobody at work will corroborate this. They won't even give him his retirement pay when he asks for it, because he can't prove he did an ounce of work. Our last interaction was him gloating to my mother's mom over how he walked more laps around the neighborhood than she did, and is therefore more hardworking and productive than she is. He's not. My maternal grandmother is amazing and has many hobbies. Then proceeded to gloat about how our candidate did not win the elections. We were already very sad that they didn't. So no, he's still an a-hole and he might be too old to learn to be otherwise. Your grandfather cheated you and took your money for himself, so he deserves to be left with nothing. Maybe if he repented you could give him a job, but that's another story. OP, you made the right decision. Disappointment is always painful, and betrayal is even worse, and unfortunately you, your mother, and sisters experienced it all, and with someone who owed you even more honesty than the money he stole from you. But in my opinion, it's almost always better to know the truth, even the very bitter truth, than to live in ignorance. Imagine that you didn't find out about your grandfather's crime until after he died, and you and your family were much older. Knowing the truth now means less regret and much less bitterness later. Now you all have a chance to build your future lives on a solid foundation of truth, instead of endless speculation and what-ifs. The last story is Pool Day Problems. I travel a lot for work. I usually spend a lot of time in more rural, smaller towns, but on this trip my company put me in a 4-star resort in Tucson, Arizona. It was a 2-week project, and rather than fly home Friday, I'd figured I'd stay the weekend and get drunk at the resort pool. Swim-up bars are my weakness. While I'm usually solo on the road, I actually knew a girl, and a cute one at that, who lived in the area. The bad news was that it was the 4th of July weekend. This hotel had quite the shindig setup for the holiday. Laser light show, DJs, bands, and special nightly rates to attract the locals to fill up the resort. The place was packed, and by Friday all hotel guests needed to have the correct color wristband, which was distributed by the front desk, to walk the resort grounds. Saturday morning my friend and 2 of her girlfriends come meet me at the hotel. We get down the pool around 2 and it's a complete SH show. Tons of kids, tons of visibly drunk adults, and not a single empty chair in sight. After a few laps around the pool area, my friend spots an empty chair, and we drop off our towels, bags, etc. and head to the swim-up bar. I'm 2 or 3 drinks into my day when one of the girls with me informed us that our chair had been taken over by a group of preteen girls. All of us head over to the chair, and I see all our SH has been thrown off the chair. "Why'd you throw all our stuff on the ground? We've been here all day. Did you have anything indicating that you were saving this chair?" "No, but whatever. We were here first." My friends started to argue with the preteens, but I don't care enough to stick around to see who wins the bee-off. Back to the bar I go. A few minutes later, one of the preteens, who I guess didn't recognize me, swims up to her mom, who incidentally is sitting next to me at the bar. I overhear their conversation where she said her chair was stolen. Her mom goes on an alcohol-fueled rant, where she's promised to kick those S's A's and stand up for what was rightfully hers. I was about to interject and explain the actual adult side of the story when I noticed something and called over the bartender. "Sir, I need your help. Can you call security?" "Sure. What's the issue?" This lady and her group do not have wristbands on. The lady had a look of sheer terror. I smiled. I got 4 seats by the pool when they all got escorted off the property. "Ha ha ha, you cleverly chased them out of the bar, but it was their own fault. You can't be an angry mommy and defend your child without knowing the real reason for the conflict. I hope this will be a lesson to them. If you want to be an a-hole, be prepared to be an a-hole." Don't forget to subscribe and have a nice day.